The Ottoman Imperial Harem, the infamous institution where slave women were held against their will in golden cages. Hundreds of beautiful women laid around, some taking baths, others half naked, waiting for the Sultan to notice them and call them to his bedroom. Or not. However, this was the portrait European travelers painted in the West, and this complicated institution still is seen as an over-glorified brothel. Thus, here is the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Ottoman Imperial Harem. Before we get to the video, please subscribe to our channel, we would dearly appreciate it. Enjoy! Ottoman Imperial Harem is one of the least understood aspects about the Ottoman Empire. This is due to lack of accurate information and abundance of Orientalist fantasies created by Western travelers. The word harem means sacred in Arabic. For example, holy sites in Islam, Mecca and Medina are also called harems. And as the name suggests, it is not meant to be a sexual place or a brothel. In the Ottoman palace, harem was simply Sultan's and his family's private quarters. And unlike their European counterparts, Ottoman royal family lived a very private life. The residents of harem were the Sultan's mother, young children, female servants, eunuchs, sisters, brothers, and concubines. Most of the women were kidnapped from Eastern and Southern Europe, then raised inside the palace to perform various duties. The single most important person in the harem was Valide Sultan, or the queen mother of the reigning sultan. Even more so than the sultan himself, she ran the affairs of the harem and got to pick the concubines that were fit to share her royal son's bed. If a concubine wished to even dream of sharing the sultan's bed, she would have to placate the queen mother first. Because it was the queen mother that picked the candidates, and then the sultan would pick among these candidates. Some of the queen mothers even assumed absolute power and ruled the empire, such as Kösem and Turan sultans. But even when they did not reign directly, queen mothers held tremendous power. Venetian and French diplomats that worked in Constantinople frequently dealt with queen mothers and informed their governments about the importance of placating them. After the queen mother came the Hasaki sultans, or the favorites. Since the harem laws did not allow for marriages, these were the concubines that gained the favor of the sultan and had sons with him. Well, there is no marriages till Suleiman broke that rule and many other rules for his love for Hürrem. At first there was only one Hasaki sultan, but their number increased in 16th and 17th centuries, and these women had a single mission, to make sure that their son survived and succeeded to the throne, which were more often than not the same. The Ottoman succession was a dogfight, to say the least. According to the laws, every single member of the dynasty had a God-given right to rule. There was only one rule: only the strongest shall rule the Ottomans. Early history of the Ottoman Empire is full of civil wars, brothers fighting each other for the throne. To prevent this, Ottomans later developed a brutal yet effective system, the fratricide. Whomever succeeded to the throne had to murder all their siblings. At times, dozens of princes were killed, including young children and even babies. Keeping this in mind, imagine being a Hasaki, seeing other Hasakis every day. It is not only you share your husband with them or your status, but also you have to fight with them for your sons and your life. It is unsurprising that this over-competitive environment gave birth to countless schemes and merciless murder. Under the Hasaki sultans, there were the dynastic princesses and princes, aunts, sisters, and daughters and sons of the sultan. The princesses also had a role to play in the politics. They were constantly married to high-ranked government officials to forge political alliances. And after the princesses came the Bureaucrats of Haram. At its height, the Imperial Harem housed some 600 people, and it was a lot of work to manage all these people. So there were dozens of female clerks and other administrative officials working inside. And at the bottom were the concubines that gave birth to daughters, and then the servants. As can be seen, the power in harem came from post-sexuality, as the historian Leslie Pierce calls it. The most powerful person in there was the Sultan's mother. Hasaki's all had sons, and most of them never shared the Sultan's bed after giving birth to a son. The power came through motherhood, as was the Turkish custom. Another mission of the harem, although much less documented, was the diplomatic one. Women of harem constantly got involved with foreign affairs in a rather unique way. It appears that they were used to build good relations with other nations. Hürrem herself, for example, was constantly in contact with the Polish kings when the Ottoman Empire needed a good relationship with Poland. And after a long war with Safavid Persians, Hürrem was then tasked with building a peaceful relationship with Persia. Likewise, Queen Mother Safiye Sultan constantly wrote letters to Queen Elizabeth and Catherine de Medici of France, whose countries were seen as valuable partners by the Ottoman Empire. But harem diplomacy was never used against hostile nations, so receiving a diplomatic mission from the Queen Mother of the Ottoman Empire was certainly good news for other nations. Harem also offered the highest level of education to women in the empire. Concubines were taught literature, calligraphy, music, embroidery, and dancing. Some of the harem women like Hürrem were actually quite good poets. At the end of the day, these concubines were being raised to mother future sultans or marry high-ranked government officials, and they had to be educated enough to be fit to these positions. The women and the men alike were also taught some useful crafts like embroidery and tailoring for women and symmetry for men. For example, Suleiman the Magnificent was a trained goldsmith. This was done so the members of the palace could survive if they were to be exiled or lose their position some way. And this came handy for a lot of the harem women, as they were forced to make a living after losing their status. The palace had Jewish merchants that came and bought the handwork of these ladies regularly. Life in the harem was very much like a life in the military. Everything was extremely organized, from manners and customs to simple things like sleeping hours. Those that violated these formal and informal codes were harshly punished or kicked out of the harem. The environment might be brutally competitive, but all the women were expected to act ladylike or get kicked. Despite all the power these women had, they were still slaves and inferior in some weird ways. Concubines could not leave the palace without permission, and most of the time their only outside contact was through black eunuchs, who were responsible for the protection of the harem. Only exception to this was the Queen Mother, of course, but even the Queen Mothers were forced to act by the customs. For example, Safiye Sultan, a Queen Mother in 17th century, was prevented from meeting a diplomat from Venice because the man was considered too lovely to meet her in person. Another interesting thing was the low regard the society had for the harem women. Of course, they were well respected, but free women considered themselves to be above them. Sultan Osman II's wife was a free Muslim woman, and she refused to join the harem after their marriage, for she was a free woman and surely was not going to disgrace herself by joining the harem. Overall, the Imperial Harem was not a glorified brothel as depicted by the Orientalists. It was the household of the Sultan, where his mother, sisters, wives, concubines, and young children lived. The women there achieved great power and status and received the best education available. Yet, it was far from a loving household. It was a place where these women had to live side by side with their rivals. It was a place where they had to lobby for deaths of infants to protect themselves and their own children. As tends to be with the Ottoman Empire, these women's lives were shaped with a single thing in mind: the survival of the empire and the dynasty. Brutal, but yet again, very effective. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, check out our other videos about Kösem Sultan and Hürrem Sultan. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode.